Hey, it's ToddFox here for Bet Online, which is your number one source for all your summer and sports needs. MLB, golf, NBA, NHL playoffs. It's all there. All the latest stats, news, scores, and follow your favorite teams as they make the journey to their promised land. Get all the best odds and all the lines, including the team matchups, player props, add-on bets. It's all there. Heard about this website today. It's one of my favorite websites out there to use for betting online, which I never got into till now. So use your mobile device, use your website if you want. Either way, you can bet. It's very easy. It's non-evasive. No one's going to steal your money like ePay did to Shohei. They know not to just lend out $1 million prop bet to some guy living in Buena Park, but you can make $1,000 bet, or you could do $500, $50, hell, even $1. It's up to you. So don't try to be an APay and steal someone else's money. You can bet online with betonline.com, where the game starts. Hey, everybody. It's a special broadcast of the Halos in the Infield daily podcast show. I'm your host, Todd Fox, and my special guest on the show today is
Lee Hacksaw Hamilton.
Yes, sir. The legend, the one, the only. You want to stay tuned for talking SoCal baseball and everything else going on in the MLB today. We're going to catch up with Lee and pick his brain as we start the show. Hey, you are now listening or watching the Halos in the Infield podcast, sponsored in part by Noble L Works over on 1621 South St. Clair, where you can get discounts by just mentioning HITI, Halos in the Infield. Drink discounts on us, baby. And also by 714 Tickets. 714 Tickets. The price you see is the price you get, and you also get 10% additionally off in the Apply Now code once you order your tickets just by mentioning HITI, Halos in the Infield. Now enjoy the show. Okay, Lee, so as we start the show, we got you on in the preseason to get your sort of predictions and how you felt about the SoCal baseball teams. First, we got to start with our Angels, Lee. Before I get your take on what happened, for all those who don't follow Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, please check out his stuff that he does on the daily. It's amazing stuff. He had one of the best takes I've heard on Angels baseball. We retweeted it the other day, or X'd it, whatever you want to call it. But Lee, give them your socials right now, your social medias, and where they can find you, and then expound on the Angels take.
Well, let's just start. If you like sports, and I know you like sports because that's why you're on this Angels podcast. If you like sports, when you're done with Todd, just go to my YouTube channel and you'll be able to see my podcast. I do them on Monday and Thursdays, and they're up there. Phenomenal. We do a wide variety of things. So if you like podcasts, it's right there. YouTube, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. If you like sports, I have a written website every day of the week. If you check it out every morning, you won't believe the volume of information. It's just LeeHacksawHamilton.com. And of course, I'm based in San Diego, where I did sports talk radio and the NFL for a long period of time. And now we've ventured into the 21st century by doing podcasts and by doing our website. And that, that's unique for me to say, because if you went down to my garage, I have a Royal manual typewriter still in my garage. So some of us have been dragged kicking and screaming into modern technology, but podcast has worked well. Website works well. Thank you for the opportunity to promote what I'm doing when the baseball fans are done listening to you. And by the way, we get phenomenal response on my podcast and on my Instagrams as it relates to all things Angels. And I do a lot of Angel content. Todd, the table is yours. Go ahead. Where do you want to go?
Well, I want to go about your take that you did the other day. It was a YouTube short that caught my eye, and you were talking about the state of the Angels and how sad you feel for the fans and what has transpired over the last couple of years and what this franchise has turned into. And I know we had some preseason, expectations for the team. They were kind of lowered, as you mentioned, but did you expect what has happened so far?
That's a good question. I tried to think of a word to describe the status of Angel baseball. And the weird word that comes to me is cursed. There is just a black cloud over this franchise that will not go away. Cursed by virtue of just the bad injury siege of the last 4 years with Mike Trout, Anthony Rendon, cursed by the amount of money they invested in a drug trouble Josh Hamilton or an aging Albert Pujols that blew up in their face, cursed by the Tyler Skaggs death, cursed by the Nick Adenhart tragedy. I mean, even if you go farther and farther back, the Donnie Moore suicide, and way back to, I'll throw a name out there that only old time Angel fans will know. Minnie Rojas, relief pitcher who died. I think he had a broken neck in spring training. The franchise just seems to be cursed and cannot get out from under all this bad news. Now, fast forward to where we are right now. I projected Bill Parcells had the favorite phrase, "You are what your record says you are." And the Angels are sitting there right now at what, 13-23, even though they beat the Pirates on Tuesday night. Went to the Cactus League and I looked at that roster and I said, yeah, you're hoping Mike Trout stays healthy and Anthony Rendon can bounce back to be what he was 4 years ago with the Washington Nationals. And then promptly Trout gets hurt again. Rendon gets hurt again. You add in the attitude question about Rendon. You look at the entire offseason and what they tried to do with their roster and what money they spent, and it became team utility man. And you just can't play 162 games without stars and real established veteran players. And what they've got is a bunch of utility guys. I counted nine. Nine of maybe their top 16 guys are just utility guys that have been around the leagues for multiple years. Now, is granted, you've got a very good young catcher and you may have a very good shortstop, and maybe this first baseman pans out. But the rest of these guys are just utility guys, and the pitching staff is wafer thin. So I just don't think they have a lot of components. And you are what your record says you are, and sadly, the Angels are in last place. And I don't think there's much else that they can bring up from AAA Salt Lake City or even AA. It takes time, and I just question how they spent the Ohtani money and what they should have done or could have done, or maybe didn't want to do, or couldn't get people to sign on to become cornerstones to the team. So Angels, this is going to be a long, long season. And I feel bad for the Angel fans. And I know there's been enormous criticism, some of it coming from my end of the world as it relates to Artie Moreno. It's a tough set of circumstances. And I don't know, by the time we get to the finish line, you'll be in last place. And by the time we get to the finish line, unless Artie Moreno decides he no longer wants to own the franchise and is willing to sell it to somebody that wants to run it correctly with a major league payroll, I just don't understand how you can just continue to drift out there and think this is okay and this is acceptable to the paying public, because I surely don't believe it is.
And that leads me into the second question. Great takes right there. When you brought up the fact that in that video too, you said that this market doesn't deserve the type of play or the ownership or the direction that we've been going. Do you think, in your opinion, that the Ohtani loss of that revenue coming in this year made Artie feel that with the Bally's money not there as well, that this was going to be something that he couldn't spend much money to tread water or to still make money without losing it? He couldn't reinvest into the team as he normally would.
Todd, the question is, if that's the case, why do you own a franchise?
Thank you.
This is a man who's made significant money in the advertising and billboard world. He knows what marketing should be all about. You got to put a good product on the field to be able to generate the gate and the revenue that you want. Now, I may have a different version of the 714 area code. I think Orange County is a good market unto itself. It's not Los Angeles. It's surely not us in San Diego. Put a good product on the field, and maybe you're going to draw 2.5 to 3 million if you have a playoff team. So I don't know whether this Bally impact has a lot to do with it. Yeah, they lost some revenue, corporate revenue, signage revenue. It's all gone to Dodger Stadium now. Hope you've taken Japanese lessons, because we'll talk about the Dodgers. I'll give you some insight into that. But at the end of the day, you had at least 30 million that you could have used to spend to replace Ohtani. And whether that's two established starting pitchers, or that's finding a bat without having to grossly overpay for somebody, or whether it was Blake Snell, although the dollars he was asking I thought were obscene. At the end of the day, you didn't do it. And this is what you have, a last place baseball team with little hope and all your stars injured, what few stars you had. I just don't think that formula was the correct way to operate. And I've been really critical of Major League Baseball. I mean, I know the payrolls of all these teams, Todd. When I see people like Oakland spending 43 million and Tampa Bay 58 million and what Pittsburgh historically has spent and what some of the other small market teams have done. I think it's a disservice to the fans. And I really believe, although I'm not a guy that's in favor of a salary cap, and we do have a luxury tax,
Mhm.
I am a firm believer in a floor to spending, Todd. And if you're taking revenue sharing money, you have to spend to the floor. And
Yeah.
you come up with a formula to what the floor is. The floor might be 110 million, maybe it's 120 million, because everybody's getting a national TV contract. Everybody is obviously getting revenue sharing, all these different market teams, and you've got your own ticket revenue and your own local media revenue. If you spend 120 million, you would lure veteran players here on short-term contracts. Right now, nobody's going to sign to play for a team that's got a $43 million payroll. But if everybody had to spend 110 or 120 million and let the Yankees and Dodgers spend their 290, if you had to spend 110, 120, you'd get quality players. And
Yep.
they might be 34-year-old starting pitchers, or they might be designated hitters, etc. But you get quality players. It makes a difference in Kansas City or Pittsburgh or Detroit or freaking Miami or in Oakland. And baseball just hasn't done it. The union should push for it because it makes everybody better. And I'll give you a prime example. What makes the National Football League great? Revenue sharing.
Yep.
And everybody has a chance to be really good because everybody spends almost the same amount of money. Of course, they do have a salary cap, but baseball just has just not been out front in terms of having to fix everything. All the small market franchises, the franchises that have stadium issues. Baseball should be front and center, carrying the flag and saying, "This is what we're going to do and make it better." Now, I don't know whether the Angels would qualify for revenue sharing. They probably would not. But at the end of the day, the greatness of the league is the product on the
Yeah.
field for all 30 teams, not the Yankees and the Dodgers or the Red Sox or the Atlanta Braves. I'm talking about all 30. And maybe Artie Moreno disagrees with me. Maybe he doesn't see it that way. It's not my money. End of the day, you got a responsibility to run a successful business, but you got a responsibility to the paying public. That's just one man's opinion.
No, I agree totally, because that's the way you would get more than 9,000 fans in a game like tonight in Pittsburgh. You have quality, you have names on the team. Most fans, if they can't name a player or they don't have a favorite player, it's gonna be hard for these teams or these fans to attend. So yeah, I would love to see. I think competitive balance has gotten better in baseball, but the way of salary cap, MLB's years and years behind, or at least, like you said, the floor, because the other three major league sports pretty much have gotten a pretty good handle of what they want to do and keeping a competitive balance and the fans intrigued in the game.
Yeah, and I think the other factor, there's an alternative way to get a franchise really good. Baltimore lost 117 games. I think it was
Hmm.
3 years ago. They kept drafting high. Now they didn't miss on anybody. They've got a great cross-section collection of pretty good
Yeah.
ball players. As much as you might hate the Houston Astros, the garbage can team that cheats and all that, they lost a ton. I think they lost 100 games 3 years in a row. They kept stockpiling players, and they got good, and they went to the World Series and all that. Tampa Bay has obviously done it correctly. You can build through the farm system, but the burning question is, are you willing to swallow 100 lost seasons for consecutive years? And then the other sidebar angle to that, not just from the Angels standpoint, you better have a good front office that's not going to miss on picks. That's a
Yep.
big issue. And if you look at what I know, Mike Elias, I'm friends with him. You look at what he's done in Baltimore. They haven't missed on anybody. You look at what Houston did, even though they wound up being a bunch of cheaters. What they did was really
Yep.
impressive too. So you can do it if you got the right people in the front office. I don't know if the Halos have the right people in the front office right now.
I don't think they do, Lee. And the last thing I got on the Angels for you is, obviously you brought up a good point. If you have a good scouting department and direction, this team hasn't had a direction. We've sort of been just floundering, Lee, like trying to restock a shelf that didn't have much in the first place. And I wish, as an Angels fan, you don't know how many times I do the post game show and people wished we had tanked it 3-4 years ago to get to where, like you said, Baltimore or some of these other teams are. We just haven't done that yet. We want to see the fruits of the labor, but it never happens.
Well, it's tough right now. I mean, now that Trout is gone, maybe 3 months. I mean, meniscus issues could be 3 months to 6 months. And,
Correct.
and Rendon's got the torn hamstring, and those things don't happen, and you don't recover from that by a week from Monday. And their pitching is wafer thin. Reed Detmers came storming out of the gate, and all of a sudden I thought, well, this might be the spinoff of last year's good finish, and maybe he becomes the ace. Sandoval, I thought, had the potential last year to be an ace, and then he hit a really rocky patch, although he pitched pretty well on Tuesday night against the Pittsburgh Pirates. A little surprised at what's going on with Griff Canning, because I thought he showed stretches that he pitched pretty well. And of course, you got a whole hodgepodge in the bullpen. But the problem is they still have enough established everyday players in the batting order, and they surely don't have this pitching staff can't go 162 games. I know
No.
I think it was 2 years ago they drafted 21 pitchers. Have any of those guys surfaced yet? It takes time to bring pitchers out of the farm system, but they had that one draft. I think it was Perry might have done that draft where they
Yes,
drafted 21 straight arms, and those guys haven't gotten there yet. Now maybe some of them will turn out, but they just don't have enough of the ingredients to think that there's great potential. It's going to help us turn the corner in the next 15 minutes. I just don't see that coming.
True. Well, let's move up north, Lee, if we can, and to the Dodgers, who are, well, predictably having one of the best records in the league. They're a stacked, loaded team, front to back. They got a good organization, Infield Stadium. Your thoughts on their first month and a half so far, or month of the season on the Dodgers? Are they where you expected them to be?
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Hey, listen, smart guy. Who are you going to pitch around? Who are you going to pitch around in the Dodger batting order? I mean, 1 through 6, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Granted, the bottom third of the batting order has been kind of a funk. Lux hasn't hit. Chris Taylor's fallen off the face of the earth. They got some other guys that are hitting in the 220s, but it's a long season. Maybe some of these guys will catch fire. But man, the front of that batting order, those guys are hitting anywhere from 283 to 366. And it's just absolutely amazing. Now, a lot of people have failed to realize this. The Dodgers have been kind of hanging on the life support system with their pitching because they've had so many injury issues, and losing Bobby Miller on top of what was already on the disabled list is amazing. Now, Buehler's back, and he was clocked at 97 in his first start in 23 months. So you got Buehler. Dustin May will start throwing. Kershaw is throwing, although those guys won't step in until maybe July or the 1st of August. But they're just a great team, and they're just bashing the daylights out of everybody with their bats. And as long as there's no significant injury to Ohtani or to Mookie Betts, they're probably going to run away with the National League West. I think that the intangible thing about Dodger baseball, and think about this, if you go back and just compile Dave Roberts' won-loss record over the last 7 or 8 years, I mean, it's been phenomenal, his winning percentage, which means the Dodgers aren't drafting real high. You look at all the pitchers that they've brought out of their organization from where they've drafted. That's the most stunning thing. I mean, they're not getting picks 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in the amateur draft. They're always down drafting 28th, 29th, 30th in every round. And yet they got Bobby Miller, and yet they got Gavin Stone, and yet they've got M. Sheehan, although he's hurt right now. And they just keep bringing these arms up. So, I mean, the intangible of who they scout, how they develop, how they take care of their pitchers to get them to Dodger Stadium, to me is one of the unsung stories as to why this thing has been rock solid and consistent for a long period of time.
I totally agree. Their scouting is second to none. One other thing, Lee, I was going to bring up to you or ask you about the Dodgers too is Mark Pryor. Is he really the guru that we think he is as far as a pitching coach? Because what he's done with Paxton, which they brought off the scrap heap, and he's undefeated right now. He's pitching like he pitched like 6-7 years ago. I mean, it seems like whoever Pryor seems to work with or the other people on that pitching staff, they turned to gold with a Dodger logo on their chest.
Well, he was down here. I thought he did a great job, and he worked in the front office for A.J. Preller, and then he worked in the minor league system. And I thought he was a real bright light, maybe a little bit ahead of the curve. I mean, in his wallet, he's got his driver's license, and he's also got the rules of analytics. He knows what he's doing. And they've had some injuries along the way too. Paxton's a renovation project. They got him dirt cheap. I guess anybody can pitch well if you got Ohtani and the boys at the top of the batting order. But no, yeah. I think Pryor is a real bright light. But I just, top to bottom organizationally, I just think it's a really good operation blueprint. quote, the Dodger way has been pretty doggone successful under Andrew Friedman. Whether you like or dislike him, respect what they've accomplished in baseball.
Yeah, as an Angel fan, when I kind of cringed when they got Friedman, because I'm like, man, Friedman did a lot in Tampa with no really good funding. And I knew if he came to the Dodgers, they were just going to give him a blank check and say, do what you got to do. And he has. And that franchise has very much succeeded because of that. So they're definitely a threat this year, as they always are. Um, is it with you now seeing Dodger baseball for so long be at such a high level? Is it sort of like, hey, wake me up when September ends? Like talk to me about October, because obviously they can win every game in the season, but will that impress you? Or are you one of those two that just say, hey, man, I got to see what these guys do in the playoffs?
Well, the playoffs have been a bit of an enigma for Dave Roberts on his resume. But see, I'm not sure that that's all Dave Roberts' fault. The general critique, Todd, has been they screwed up the pitching every postseason. They've screwed up this pitching. The overuse of the starters, putting starters in the bullpen in between starts, pulling guys at the wrong time, right time, etc. I'm not sure that's all Dave Roberts. I think that might be coming from up top. I swear to you, they give him an analytics book of
Yeah.
this is what we think he should be doing come game time. Who's first guy out of the bullpen? Who's going to be a pinch hitter in certain situations? And you do have the analytics of how guys hit against right-handers versus left-handers and how you position guys in the field. I understand that science of baseball. So even though the postseason has had a lot of glitches to it, I'm not so sure this is strictly on Dave Roberts as it compared to the analytic guys upstairs that have given him that notebook and said, "This is the game plan for today. Let's see how it goes. Try to make it follow." Sidebar comment on the Dodgers. We were talking about Ohtani with the Angels. I don't know if you paid any attention to this. In the last 3 weeks, the Angels have announced signed contracts with 8 corporate advertisers from Japan: airlines, cars, pharmaceuticals, real estate companies. Practice up on your Japanese because you're going to wake up going to Dodger Stadium and the signage is going to be in a foreign language. I mean, the Dodgers are brilliant from the business perspective because what they've gone abroad and they have signed all these corporate advertisers, and that signage is probably up at Dodger Stadium and it's going to continue to grow. And they're paying for a piece of the contract with the Japanese corporate money that they've gotten. And I'm sure Artie Moreno had some of that at Angel Stadium, but
Oh, yeah.
probably not to the volume of what the Dodgers have done. I swear to you, every week I get an email and there's a new corporate advertiser from the Pacific Rim that's now part of Dodger baseball. I mean, they're not only brilliant in baseball, they're brilliant, I think, in the business of baseball.
Oh yeah, and plus, we had a Japanese Airlines, we had a few other advertisements, Bandai Namco, things of that nature. But you're right. I mean, the Dodgers take it to another level. In preseason, they had a shirt which the Angels never took advantage of that, putting the Japanese flag in the background and Ohtani kind of looking proud in his Dodger uniform. I'm like, man, that's beautiful. It's embracing the culture, the people, and the Dodgers have always been really good at that with multinational players on their team in general, so they could relate to this melting pot that is Los Angeles market. So it is kudos to them. And another sidebar to that, Lee, is I love the fact that when they do bobbleheads or they do some of their promotions, you'll see players from the past like Oral Hershiser bobblehead, and they acknowledge their past too, and that's something that the Angels have not done either. And they need to look upon their their friends from the north to do their marketing better.
Yeah, well, it's their success aside from the World Series season. The Tim Salmon era, the David Eckstein era, Langston, and those guys. I mean, their years of great success have been so spread out. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Don Baylor and Reggie Jackson and the Gene Autry era was a long time ago, but there are ways to market the personalities of your franchise, and you got to win too on top of doing that. The Dodgers have such a tradition. It goes back to when they moved here in 1958. And prior to that, I was a kid. I saw the Dodgers. I was a young kid. I saw the Dodgers at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn in
Mm-hmm.
Jackie Robinson's last year. So the heritage of Dodger baseball covers decades upon decades, whereas the success the Angels have been a short blip here with a World Series team and another short blip over here way back in the Gene Autry era. So it all kind of goes hand in hand. You got to win first before I think you can build that.
True, true. Now, speaking of getting to win first before you get any kind of pub, the Padres were very vocal last year about the team they had. Were projecting a World Series run themselves, but they came, the whole trauma and everything that went last year with the Padres just did not go as expected. This year, Lee, are the Padres where you thought they were? And they've made some additions to be a little bit better. Do you think this team can get to the postseason this year? What are your initial thoughts on the Padres overall?
Yeah, an enormous amount of pressure on AJ Preller, the general manager, because the late owner, Peter Seidler, allowed him to do what he wanted to do. They spent enormous amounts of money, went over the luxury tax threshold 3 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they've been dinged a little bit. The tragic passing of Peter Seidler was a terrible blow. The reality that they lost their $60 million TV contract from Bally's and MLB kind of took over the broadcast. They had to pay a $40 million luxury tax fee for all the money that Preller spent. And in all honesty, as AJ has started his ninth year here in San Diego, they've had one one fun season a couple of years ago when they got to the postseason and they beat the Dodgers, and that's the only accomplishment over 9 years. And the expectation was last year was supposed to be the year, and it fell flat on its face because virtually every one of their everyday players underachieved statistically, did not have their career seasons or even their average seasons, and they're really in a tough situation, and they've made a lot of bold trades. They've traded the farm system away twice. They're in the midst of doing it a third time right now. They sign everybody. My golden retriever could sign all these players. If my golden retriever overpays for every draft pick and every international player, my dog would be bringing all these all-stars in here. And that's happened. If you go back and look at all the draft picks and the internationals, they've grossly overpaid for everybody. And then they grossly overpaid for Xander Bogaerts, and they gave Manny Machado a mega contract, and they gave Tatis a phenomenal contract well before he was arbitration eligible. And they did the same thing with Jeff Cronenworth. So the problem is that AJ, there's never been any accounting. Well, there is accounting now with the new leadership and ownership, and their payroll is $100 million less than it was a year ago, and they're under the luxury tax threshold because they have to stay under it this year because the penalties as a fourth-year offender are just phenomenal. But AJ woke up about a week ago and realized this is a 500 team in the aftermath of the Juan Soto trade that he had to make. And that's why he made this deal with Miami to get Luis Arraez, the leadoff hitter, designated hitter, first baseman, second baseman, a guy that I compared. When that trade came down last Friday night, Todd, I thought to myself, and I followed him extensively, first in Minnesota, then with the Marlins. This time last year, the dude was hitting almost 400 by the time I got to the All-Star break, and then he tailed a little bit and didn't have a good team around him. But that being said, when they got him, I thought, holy cow, this guy's a great pure hitter. Now, maybe it's ridiculous to say this guy's the equal of Tony Gwynn, but you look at his last 5 years statistically, it's phenomenal. I said, well, if he's not Tony Gwynn, then maybe he's Rod Carew, pretty
Yeah.
good stroke guy. Or maybe he's Wade Boggs. Maybe he's Tony Oliva. This guy leaves the breakfast table swinging the bat at the first pitch every time. And he's been pretty productive everywhere he's been, and now he's into this mix here. But they paid a price to get him, just like they paid a steep price to get Dylan Cease from the White Sox on a 2-year rental before he becomes a free agent. So they're putting the eggs in the basket, and they're going to try to be a playoff team this year. The trouble is they're in the division of the Dodgers. The trouble is the Citizen Bank ballpark bangers are in Philadelphia, and what they're doing is absolutely phenomenal. And you got Atlanta. So they're running uphill here, and if they have any injuries, they have no depth at all because AJ has just continued to trade volumes of prospects away. And we look at the lineups of a lot of ball clubs and check the box scores. A lot of ex-Padres, a lot of places doing pretty doggone well that used to be here and probably used as trade bait. So they might be a wild card team, but they have lack of depth in the rotation. They have an injury situation with Joe Musgrove that is not going to be solved real quick. They hold their breath when Yu Darvish goes out to pitch, which he's got a lot of miles on that arm, and he's had some different things that have flared up. So they're going to be good. They're still drawing 40,000 fans per game, second best in baseball, only to the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that they've got enough to play 162 games because more guys are probably going to get hurt. And if they lose any more pitching, they're going to have problems because they don't have much budget space left to be able to go make another trade. They do have farm system guys they could use. And last week I was asking in my podcast, well, I know the Arise trade rumors out there with Miami again. I said, but are we going to revisit shedding the farm system for a third time in AJ's 9 years? So he's under some real pressure. If they don't make the playoffs, there might be an evaluation that maybe his way of doing business doesn't work. But they have brought excitement back to San Diego. I mean, Petco Park just rocks. And by the way, message to Artie Moreno and John Carpino: you can do this if you want to do it right. Maybe you get your stadium to rock again, because I would have never ever imagined I could see what's happening at Petco Park with the prices they're charging. They raised their ticket prices 38% in 3 years, and the fans have responded because the product has been so good on the field. Angels, that's my memo to you. Fix it, and they will come.
Oh wow, well said right there. Because I have seen the difference in San Diego, and I'll tell you this, Lee. Every time the last few years when the Padres either push for the playoffs or they get to the playoffs, you should see how the Angel fan base, it's always like, we hate the guys to the north, so we're going to root for the guys to the south when our team is out. And a lot of Angel fans become Padre fans in those, September months or October, because they are a fun team to watch. And, if given the choice, I'd love to see the Padres win a World Series. You guys deserved it. My grandpa was in Escondido forever. He passed away just before the 98 World Series. And so he never got to see the Padres get to that championship team with all those great players they had. But I would love to see the city of San Diego, especially with all they've had to go through losing the Chargers, get to the World Series and do good. So, yeah, they are a team that I like to root for when the Angels are long and cooked. But I would like for them to succeed. The trade with Miami I thought was great, and you brought up a good point. He is a huge pure hitter. I mean, that guy he just has a great hand-eye coordination, puts the barrel of the bat on the ball every time, can spray it everywhere. I mean, just if he's getting on routinely, he's nothing but help for that meat of the order.
Well, if you get a guy like him getting on base in the leadoff spot, that means he's going to get 4 or 5 at bats. He went 4 for 4 his first game in San Diego.
Yeah, I saw that.
He got off the plane spraying hits, and the unique thing is he's a foul line to foul line hitter, Todd. I mean, I don't care where you throw it, he does swing at it, and he'll put it in play. And that might be down the third base line, that might be down the first base line, it might be in the gaps, etc. And if you get him on base multiple times in a game, and then you got Machado and you got Tatis, and Cronenworth's had a bounce back season. Some guys are not playing well. Hassan Kim is not playing well. I don't know if it's the pressure of a free agent year just around the corner, or maybe they've figured him out a little bit. But they've got the potential to be good if they can keep their pitching staff intact. And that's an issue because, they wound up losing 4 starting pitchers in the offseason who left in free agents and went other places because they couldn't afford to keep all these guys. So that being said, a lot of baseball to be played. Got to stay healthy. I think they could be really good. I do think they got to get in the playoffs to maybe keep Preller's job.
Yes, absolutely, Lee. Now, I know you've given us a lot of time real quick. I don't want to squeeze you for any more, but I've just got one last question for you. Actually, it's two-parter. Surprises and disappointments so far in the MLB season?
Well, there's no doubt that Philadelphia has got every component you want. A lot of people were beefing. They didn't do anything in free agency. Yes, they did. They re-signed Nola and Zach Wheeler. They gave them each $160 million contracts. That was their free agent acquisition. And their pitching staff is deep. We saw them come in here at Petco Park last week, Todd. Hit 9 home runs in 3 games, and I think 3 of the balls caught at the warning track.
Wow.
I mean, they are just mashing. And Bryce Harper is healthy. He's happy. He's willing to do anything. He just hit another grand slam home run, I think, tonight. So, I mean, Philadelphia is just really dominant. I'm a little bit surprised at the Yankees and where they are. Because when you lose Garrett Cole, I mean, he hasn't thrown a fastball at anger yet this season because of the elbow, although he's on the track back. And they started the season with this great mystery of, will Rondon ever be what they thought he would be when he was with the White Sox, and Severino and some of these other guys. And yet the Yankees are just killing it. And of course, Soto's got a lot to do with that. And then you got Judge, and then you got Stanton, and they got Verdugo from the Red Sox. I've never seen a division to division trade, but that happened. So the Yankees right now are balling because their bats are really cooking. Baltimore is Baltimore. This is the second year in a row. This is the real deal. Their kids are not intimidated. And getting Corbin Burns, I think, has helped them a great deal. And maybe the biggest surprise to me is Cleveland. I mean, they lost Beavers with the elbow for 14 months, and they don't have a lot of quote national names in that rotation. And they got one bat I recognize in Jose Ramirez, and yet Cleveland, I think, is 23-13, small market budget. So that's a pretty good organization. I would say those to me off the top of the surprises. If you look at the standings, I expected the Angels to be where they are, sadly. Houston is in last place only because their top 6 starting pitchers are on the disabled list. They
Yep.
got two bats that have fallen off the face of the earth. Alex Bregman, I think, is hitting like 203, and this is a free agent year for him. And he's really strung together a lot of good years. Abreu, the ex-White Sox guy, is in the minor leagues trying to find his game, and this is a vested veteran. When they asked him to go to the minors to work on his game, they sent him, I think, to Kissimmee or West Palm Beach in Class A ball. He's batting 093. This guy's on a $68 million contract. It's like he woke up and lost the speed in his swing and can't hit. So I think Houston's been a shocker. That's a byproduct, I think, of the injuries more than anything. I'm really peeved at the Colorado ownership. What they've done up there is a disgrace. That has the potential. A lot of people don't remember this. They drew 4 million fans one season in Colorado and won in the World Series year. And that's a great regional franchise. And the owner has run it as a low budget thing. And poor Bud Black, he does not have a lot of stars in the everyday lineup. Charlie Blackmon's got 150,000 miles on his wheels. He's just not the same player anymore. They traded Arenado. And the pitching staff is tattered. They got a better pitching staff on the disabled list than they do in the starting rotation right now. They do have some young players coming, but so I feel bad for Colorado. Miami, to me, is an absolute disgrace. And this goes back to my opinion that baseball needs to do more to make all these smaller market franchises more competitive because it's good for the overall picture of the game. But, here's Bruce Sherman, who ran off Derek Jeter, who was supposed to be the savior, then hired Kim Ng, the ex-Dodger GM, and then tried to hire a president over her. And she said, no, I'm the decision maker. You agree to that. And then she walked away from her contract. And poor Skip Schumacher's got no players. And their pitching staff in the last 18 months has been destroyed by elbow and shoulder injuries. So Miami's a mess. And of course, Oakland is such a bad situation, although Kotsay's just managing his shoes off to try to keep them competitive. And that's horrible. Nobody goes to the games. And, welcome to Sacramento next year. And then the worst one is the White Sox.
Oh, yeah.
They're owned by a tremendously reputable guy in Jerry Reinsdorf, who had great success with the White Sox, World Series team, and obviously Chicago Bulls. Why this product is the way this product is at the new Comiskey Park, to me, is absolutely shocking. And after they traded Dylan Cease, it's like the bottom fell out. And you got all these young players, but none of them are major league ready. And what few young major leaguers you have, I mean, they had a bunch of Caribbean players, Eloy Jimenez and those guys, Moncada, they can't stay healthy. They are always hurt and always on the disabled list. And I think tonight, as we started your podcast, I think their record was 8-28. And it's a franchise owned by a man with great sports experience and success in Jerry Reinsdorf. So that's my hot list. That's my cold next to being dead list as we go into the second month of the season.
Yeah, and then Chicago, side note on that, they've been shut out 9 times already.
So. No bats. Oh, the best bats they have are on the DL.
Yep, correct. Well, Lee, it was a pleasure as always talking sports with you, and obviously baseball. But if you want to talk all sports or hear him talk NBA, NHL, football, he talks even Olympics when it comes around, anything and under the sun, Lee Hacksaw has it for you. One more time, Lee, can you promote yourself and tell them where they could find you?
Listen, I do a podcast on Mondays and Thursdays. It's on my own YouTube channel like his. It's Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Find it. You'll enjoy it. We do cover a lot of topics on the table. We do have opinions, and we do something really different. I'm kind of linked up with a creative genius who does my IT. We do a thing called Fans Forum, and we actually have fans who join us on each podcast at the end of our podcast. So watch it. You'll get a kick out of it. Subscribe, if you will. That way you'll get the alerts every time we put things up on the YouTube channel. So we do that on Monday and Thursdays. And then I have my written website, which a lot of people read. If you check it every morning, you'll be the smartest guy in the building. That's LeeHacksawHamilton.com. Todd, nice to do this. We'll check in again as we march through this season.
Thank you, Lee. You were the internet before the internet. So
my pleasure. Thanks again for having me on.
Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.